Dick Heller, also known as a gun dude, U.S. veteran, retired police officer, and the man who won U.S. Supreme Court case and made a historic Second Amendment decision in District of Columbia v. Heller, and restored the Second Amendment rights that protect an individual's right to keep and bear arms in Washington, D.C. Mr. Heller is also the founder and executive director of the Heller Foundation.
We are so welcome you today to this amazing interview. Mr. Heller, today your name is a basically symbol for civic courage and constitutional freedom for millions of Americans. And you were the one who is the driving force for the Supreme Court magnificent Second Amendment gun decision. And I watched your interviews, I watched and read your interviews in the different magazines, and you were actually saying that you just wanted to be able to legally defend your home. So that's basically how it started, right? And could you share more your story, maybe in more details, how it's all started, why you make this decision?
Oh, thank you.
To get out from coach, right?
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I would say that I was just a normal young dude enjoying the freedoms of America, chasing girls, drinking beer, driving sports cars. And in 1975, the city passed a law that said, all you people that own guns, you cannot own them anymore. And I got to thinking, I was a military man. I'd been in the paratroopers about 10 years before, and I did not own a gun. But I got to thinking, maybe I should own a gun. So I drove to America, which would be one of the states outside of Washington, D.C., purchased a gun and brought it back home because the law the city passed did not take effect until a year later. So I thought, if I own the gun, then I will be able to argue with this regulation in some fashion. But keep in mind, I didn't know anything about the law or the Constitution, except I knew we had a Second Amendment. And it took me 20 years of studying and visiting think tanks in Washington. A think tank is a political organization that could be either side of the fence. So I visited every think tank that was in the phone book. Back then we had telephone books. And visit a lot of the think tanks to try to find a group of people that were interested in the constitutional Second Amendment, and maybe I could join them or they could join me, and we could have an effect of some sort on this, what appeared to me to be an unconstitutional regulation of our Second Amendment. And 20 years later, everything just came together. And
so all this lawsuit case started with 6 people first, right?
Yes.
But basically, it's ended up when you were the only one, right? And that's the question, there was a long way, I would say, right? So did you have any, back then time, concerns, or did you worry about anything?
That is a very good question, because it started out with 6 people. Basically, it started out with one person, a lady by the name of Miss Parker, who lived in the wrong part of the city, and she was reporting to the city, the police, and the mayor's office that there was just too much drug dealership on her street that was affecting her children. The drug dealers didn't like that when the cops started snooping around, and they threatened to burn her house down. So she told the police, I need a gun. They're trying to burn my house down and kill my children. And they said, no, you can't have a gun. It kind of shows you the insanity of government. All the criminals surrounding her house and threatened to kill her had guns. Of course, they're drug dealers. But the good guys, we couldn't have guns. And there's one idea that says, well, the cops want to go after the citizens, the honorable citizens, with guns because they're less risky than having a shootout trying to take guns away from the criminals. And so that started a movement, and Eventually, 5 more people joined in. And when the smoke cleared on who had the best legal argument to stand before the judges, it turned out that I was the last man standing, which is an expression. I was the last man standing because I had gone down and tried to register a gun, and the judge said, Mr. Heller has exhausted all administrative remedy. Therefore, Heller has standing. The case may move forward now. That was a magic moment. Many magic moments, but that was a magic moment.
Did you have back then any like media attention, any, I don't know, pressures, misunderstanding or anything like that?
No. The city was feeling very arrogant and confident in the regulations they had passed. So what do these citizens know? They have no effect on us. We're the government, for heaven's sakes. So, don't even pay any attention to them. And then all of a sudden we got into the court system and the atmosphere started changing. They maintained their arrogance all the way up to the Supreme Court, of course, but the outcome changed everyone's attitude.
So as far as I understand, back in 1976, that was the, you basically saw how, the capital of the freest country in the world, right? Basically banning the rights to have a gun. And then after like 20 years later, you start your journey. And in 2008, you basically won the case, right?
Yes.
So it's a long period of time.
That's a long story, yes.
What helped you to not give up, to move forward during all this, time?
Nice question. Looking back, I can call myself a hero, but it didn't work. That's not the way it happened. Okay? It was a long time research, meeting people, being rejected, no, a crazy idea. And then I met an individual who added spark to my concerns and my research. This was a man, very brilliant man. I like to say some people are so smart that they must be from another planet. This man was one of them. He was a medical doctor, and he was a military man, went to Vietnam, and when he got out, he remained competitive as a shooter, and he was even on the president's 100 team. Now, what that is the 100 best shooters in America every year goes to the White House, and they get an award from the president and a plaque that says top 100. And so when he moved into one of my apartments, he says, where do I keep my guns? And I said, yeah, right, we don't have guns in D.C. He says, no, I have guns. I said, really? And so he had to get his guns out of town. But what caused that, he says, here I am in the capital of the freest country on the planet. We have in our Constitution a Second Amendment that says I can own my guns, and here we cannot. Something's wrong here. So he got his guns he took them to Virginia, to America, put them in his warehouse, and he came back and he says, I'm going to go to law school. He's one of those brilliant people that here he's like age 50, going to go to law school. He says, I want to learn how to fight this issue, these regulations. And I said, dude, I'm going to become a cop. They'll give me a gun. That'll mean something in a court of law, right? When now I'm deprived. And that was a venture between the two of us that ended up over another couple of years in success.
That's amazing. I remember the picture where you were actually the police officer, right? And
pointing to my gun?
Yes, pointing to your gun, and that I can have a gun to protect them, but I cannot have a gun to protect myself and defend myself, right?
To advance that, what it really amounted to is if they would give me a gun to protect the government people, but I could not have a gun to protect the cop, then I'm a little slow, but a couple of years later, I figured out, my, we do live in a two-tiered system, not unlike the old Soviet Union. And then I started to get angry. We didn't like Russia. We didn't like the Soviet Union.
Actually, you just now also remind me that you shared in the media also a love that is so correlated to what you done, because you basically stood up and you start to do something to really make it happen, right? So you didn't wait that somebody will do this, right, for you. And your phrase is that actually, if we give the responsibility somebody else to take care of us, they're going to care about us less than we would care about ourselves.
We care about their agenda more than our agenda, and our agenda is certainly 100% about freedom. And freedom is a whole nother wide topic to discuss, certainly.
How would you like to communicate this message to all the people that basically they need to remember about this responsibility? And it's even very egoistic thing, I would say, because they need to understand that nobody else will care more about them than themselves.
Are you capturing my wide grin with that beautiful question? The answer is, governments understand this. They do understand it. So this is not a warning to the governments. This is a warning to the citizens. When the government has all the guns, the citizens are then slaves, or the citizens are servants. When the citizens own guns, then the government is the servant to the will of the people, and they'll more likely do what's right.
You basically already said that, right? You're a veteran of the United States Army Force, and you basically having served in the Airborne Division. And here's the more question about what do you think, you as a veteran, as someone who served to this country, what America means to you?
America, if you have to have one word, it's the word freedom. Without freedom, without Second Amendment, without guns, you have nothing. You are the slave, the vassal, the servant of the system. The Soviet Union proved that. Every other country on the planet basically proves that. And even as an example, when the Russian invasion started in Ukraine, they couldn't get guns into the hands of people fast enough. Even women said, I want a gun too. Okay? There's a message there. People need to be armed. And if I may extend that, there's an expression from World War II where Yamamoto said, General or Admiral Yamamoto said, the emperor would be very foolish to invade America because there is a rifle behind every blade of grass. And I think that is powerful. That's what they understood. And they've even had movies about that. Invasions of America get repelled by the citizens being armed.
And when we talk about the future generations and young people, youth people, you inspire a lot of young people, and that's pure truth. You might maybe say no, or but that's pure truth. And I saw how young people, they come to you and they're like, oh my goodness, that's a gun deal. There's Mr. Heller, the one who restored the Second Amendment. And
Thank you for that, but I don't experience it that much. Okay, it's not like I'm an arrogant rock star or something. I've got case complaint number 20 is in the appeals court as we speak. And then this morning in church, a guy came up to me with a new gun case for Maryland, which is the next jurisdiction over. And I'm excited about that. I mean, while we were driving in the car, you heard me making notes about how we could handle this case. So to me, it's not about the money. It's not about a swelled head rock star. It's about, I don't even have kids, but it's for the next generation of kids. Okay, because it's like there's a gun god and he's telling me what to do. Does that make sense?
It is, makes sense. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the future generations? If we talk about, our future, what do you think is so much important to preserve in American society?
With my sense of humor, I'm going to make a statement that says we're doomed. Okay, do you know the word doomed?
I know.
That means bad news, because you go down the streets of the city and these youngsters with college educations working in Congress leave their scooters in the middle of the sidewalk. Now that, to me, is just an abject rejection of any kind of responsibility. So somebody comes along, somebody that's an old person comes along with a cane, they have to walk around this scooter. Somebody in a wheelchair, they're obstructed. To me, it's a strong showing of irresponsibility. And maybe that's just me and nobody else notices it, but I've been around a few days.
So you basically want to preserve the responsibility for...
It's most important. And some governments are catching on now so that they don't allow teenagers to drive until they're 18. And in many cases, many states, they have to take a driver's education course, because if they're not brought up being taught responsibility, then you have to give them restrictions and regulations, okay? And let them know what responsibility is, and warn them that if you break this law and go too fast, run a red light, you're going to be penalized, because their general comprehension of responsibility, it hasn't set in me that they have it yet.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's very important because, without responsibility, it's a foundation.
What's interesting? It hit me a couple of weeks ago. I'm a firearms instructor. I teach women-only classes. And what's really important is I say, this is a class about safety, and it's so important to understand, in our gun world, there is no such thing as an accident. Okay? Mm-hmm. It's called negligence. And what I don't understand is every time someone has a fender bender, they say, oh, she had an accident, he had an accident. Well, no, somebody was negligent. Okay? Only 1% of cases of accidents was it truly an accident. Like, I'm driving a little car hiding behind a truck, and the lady doesn't see me, so the truck's turning, and I'm not, and I'm going the speed limit, and she turns in front of me, and we have an accident. That's an accident. Nobody was negligent. It should be the same in driving as it is as strenuously practiced in the firearms world. There's no such thing as an accident. It's always negligence.
That's a very good point. And as you mentioned already now about your classes, I just wanted also to mention to our viewers is that basically you do these classes for women and you do it for free, specifically for women, right?
Right, yes. Women need the equalizer. And believe it or not, when people take a gun class and they go to the range, they don't particularly always want to be carrying a gun. So in my early classes, I started handing out free pepper sprays so that they could carry it in their purse. And then after I practiced a little bit, I just found that they weren't mechanically dependable. Okay, it might not operate as fast as you wanted it to. So then I started handing out and promoting stun guns to carry in your purse. Because one touch of that thing will knock you across the room, I know from experience.
Yeah, I know. I remember you told that one time you just mixed up a little bit and
I was confused.
Yeah.
I had a negligence. I didn't have an accident. I had a negligence.
Mr. Heller, you basically said that you lived through different eras of propaganda. And it's very interesting from your perspective that you can share, how do you see this different eras of propaganda? How was it changed? Because that was, probably a long time ago, there was just general like posters, right? But now it's evolved to the social media, to internet, and so on and so forth. Did you have any of, let us say, of this eras of propaganda that stood out, or anything very, particular you wanted to share? How did you see this? Why they were like different, I would say.
I would say, since you brought the topic to my attention a few months ago, looking back, I can see that there were different periodic changes as science of the mind, of the brain, grew. I remember when I was a young teenager, we didn't have television, we didn't have internet, we didn't have portable telephones, we had a phone with a string on the wall. So our communication with the outside world was the string on the wall telephone and the movies. Everybody went to the movies. And I noticed in there, it did not go unnoticed, let's say, that there would be a 2 or 3 frame flash of popcorn. And a few minutes later, a 2 or 3 frame flash of a soda pop, typically a Coca-Cola. And it did not go unnoticed that the lobby filled up with people buying popcorn and Coca-Cola. And when the general public caught on, they said, no, this is not right. And so that was called subliminal programming in the movies. So regulations were passed that eliminated that. And then television came along, became a big medium, and all of a sudden, the comparable to that was, to me, I recognize it was the repetition of ideas. Today, you might call that orange man bad. They say that over and over and over enough, and people that don't even think about politics or election begin to repeat the mantra. So you've gone from subliminal to repetition to intense repetition that leaves an image in people's brains that they even take to bed with them probably, and affects their political thought process profoundly. And the legacy fake news media is really great at that. Was that a good answer?
Yes, it was an amazing answer. And here I would go a little bit deeper because, I also, read and watched your interview where you once said that basically right now every church in America is in danger, and every church should have a security, should have gun, and that's a big issue here. So you mentioned about the Catholic churches, just only Catholic churches, that we have attacks like more than 100 attacks a year. And comparing to France, for example, they have around 500 attacks, right?
With 1/5 the population.
Exactly. So that's big estimate. It's it's so much. And we understand that, unfortunately, basically, it's increasing over the decades right now, right? And it's churches, synagogues, university campuses. And here I would love to go a little bit deeper and touch the topic that's basically, I would say, so sensitive here in the United States, and not only. So when we talk about the basically protection, right, and defense ourselves, but we see this mass shootings. We see not only in the US, it's mostly mass shootings. But what we see in Europe, we see stabbings where people they take knives and basically attack other people with knives. So, and why this topic in the United States, what I wanted to mention is that it's so become political because it's end up on the questions to get guns, right, to protect ourselves. But what is, for me, was very interesting to not go politically, but to see it from different angle, to explain people to different views, different political views. It doesn't matter. The matter is that a lot of people are saying if we will not have guns, right, then the mass shooting will end. But why I'm telling about a different angle, because when we take a look in US with this mass shootings, school shootings and church shootings, people have guns, but in Europe, they don't have guns. But they still commit such a crime and they do these attacks, but they use knives, meaning we can see and we can understand from this perspective that the problem is not with the guns, with the arms, not with the tool. You change the tool, but they still commit it. So in your perspective, I think it's a very obvious question, but still, what you think, is that real, like the gun problem, or is the problem with people's minds? What is happening here?
It's not a tool problem. I'll give you a very good example to show how the communists want to disarm every country. And if they're not quite communist, Karl Marx said, socialism is communism. It's just a gentler name at the moment. It'll be hardcore later. Give you an example. Hillary Clinton was promoting the Australian model of gun control. And I forgot the exact dates. I have all the specifics in my chapters, but they outlawed firearms. So what happened when theoretically all guns were illegal and the citizens did not own guns, I like to ask people, do you know how much the homicide rate went down? And they would say, oh, well, a lot. And actually, a lot would be like more than 50%. Well, the homicide rate went down approximately 20%. And then, strangely enough, they went back, the homicide rate went back up because that 20% was made up with knives and clubs. So the heart of the man the heart of mankind, if you want, did not change. It just changed the tool. And even in England, after they did away with guns, and they have the highest murder rate in Euro right now, they had the homicide rate went back up because of knives and swords, so they had to outlaw knives. Is that stupid or what? I mean, everybody has 10 knives in their kitchen. I'm wondering if they're going to outlaw that one of these days and kick in your door to take away your butcher knife. We say oh no, that's really stupid. But what's interesting is that eventually the highest level of stupidity seemed to be accomplished. Okay? Now, that question you asked was multifaceted. All right? So that was just one example of how, I have another one. That was just one example of how it is not weapon dependent. It is people dependent. In America, strangely enough, I'll say all, 95% of the mass shootings happen in places that are called gun-free zones, like college campuses, like schools. And what you'll find is the big cities that have all the stringent gun regulations is where the murder rate is the highest. And interestingly enough, where people have total freedom to own firearms without registration or talking to the government and getting permission or filling out a piece of paper for the government, that's where the homicide rates are the lowest. So it isn't the tool, it's the attitude of the government. I call it promoting homicide. Just think about it empirically. If I can't have a gun to protect me and a criminal wants to shoot me, the government's preventing me from firearms ownership. They are complicit in this process.
Yeah, very interesting. And
there's probably 10 more questions that were in there that I have not yet addressed. I'm sorry.
Yeah, definitely. No.
I'm a simple guy.
No, you definitely covered this up. I also wanted to mention, as you know, that we actually met each other, right, at the congressional briefing in the Rainbow House office building when ALLATRA International Public Movie presented the information about the subliminal, actually, mind control. And basically, we're presenting the information how, basically during the Soviet Union times, right, Soviet secret services developed that method or an approach that some researchers call puzzle piece coding. And basically to cover up how it works, that they use it like for years for, using multiple informational wave in the media, in the internet to encode a teenager for these armed attacks or stabbings in Europe, for example, right? And it's accomplished really like remotely, basically. Now with the social media, with the internet, unfortunately, it's very easy, to do that. And I wanted to approach you with the question from your side as the one who involved in the security protection. How do you see, knowing, that is happening and these mass shootings and school shootings increasing, unfortunately?
They can use it as a technique, and for the assassinations that are happening, boy, it's interesting that process probably is still operational. It's scary, okay?
Yeah,
Ever since you educated me.
Yeah, it is. And if we talk about the assassination attempts, that's a lot of information. And in the US, in other countries where those assassination attempts happened, and too much similar things in those assassination happens. So
sure, they don't use a gun, they use a truck, okay? And they say, hey, we like trucks better. You can kill more people, So there's people in this country that are being programmed like that.
Thank you very much for sharing everything you shared today. That was a really, really pleasure to talk to you. And I think it's going to be even like series of the interview, who knows, right? But we truly appreciate your time. And I don't know if you would have like a very short message to Americans or to international audience. What would you say to them?
All around the world, people should know that we're the freest country, the most productive country, because of our Second Amendment, we have the freedom, and the First Amendment that give us total thought process and association. And that's what keeps us. It's about equilibrium now. It could get better, but that's what keeps government at bay, is our Second Amendment and our freedom to defend ourselves. And even Jefferson said, I think you folks, to keep your freedom, you need to have a revolution about every 20 years. Well, our founding fathers were more brilliant even than that, because we've gone 249 years and we haven't really had a revolution.
Thank you so much. I think it's perfect final words.
Thank you for inviting me here, and it's my pleasure to share my ideas with the rest of the world that does not have the freedom that we enjoy in America.
Thank you very much for sharing this, and thank you so much for your time. That was really, really a pleasure to talk to you.